It really freaks me out that I'm in debt for the rest of my adult life because of this piece of paper. Why is it so expensive? Hi, I'm Neve from Booksarebrainfood. Usually I talk about books, but today I thought I would talk about my degree. More importantly, how I raised my grades. So if you don't know me, I went to Queen's University in Belfast. It's a Russell Group University in Northern Ireland. I graduated in 2019. I studied English literature. I got a first class mark in my degree, and I got a first class mark in every single assignment that I did in final year, which is not uniform across the rest of my university experience. In first and second year I was getting very varied grades, going as low as I think my lowest grade was 42 and my highest was maybe like 68. I don't think I ever got a first before final year. I put this down to a few things. I think I really realised in final year how important it was to do well because I had a really good university experience. I wanted to have a nice conclusion to the end of my university experience, and I also felt because English is quite a privilege to study at university, I thought it was like my personal duty to do as good as I can. I actually wasn't aiming for a first. I didn't think it was possible whenever you add up the rest of my grades. So whenever I got a first I cried. I was so shocked. I just wasn't expecting it at all. But I really do put it down to a few things that I'm going to talk about in this video that I think might help you as well. A 2-1 is what I was aiming for whenever I was looking to boost my grades. So getting a first was just like a nice byproduct of that. Most of my tips are literature based and would be more specific to like a humanities degree or something where you're studying and writing something that's kind of subjective. But some of it's also to do with like time management, so maybe that'll apply to somebody from a different degree or a different discipline. I also want to point out that I really didn't like bust myself constantly to get these grades. This was a really good example of me being really consistent rather than getting to the last minute and really cramming. I did have a little bit of that, but definitely not as intensely as I did in the previous years, and I think that's also how I got my grades to be more consistent and also raised to a higher standard. For some context as well, I was living in a rented accommodation with 2 of my friends. I was working part-time in a supermarket. Sometimes that was also full-time, so I was balancing that and like paying my bills and also studying at the same time. I was also doing like freelance bits, and I was the editor of our university magazine for the lifestyle column. So I just want to show that it's possible to get those grades and have like a sustainable real-life balance. I think whenever I finished second year, because my grades were so confusing, I sat down and I was like, right, what are my problems? Like realistically, what is holding me back from getting these grades that I know that I'm capable of getting? Things like attending class and neglecting like weekly reading and finding like weak spots and just like really fine-tuning them. The main thing my degree has been useful for so far has been getting me an unconditional offer to go and study publishing in Edinburgh in September. I'm going to Edinburgh Napier and I'm like really excited to be going back into academics. So in a way, like by filming this, I'm trying to remind myself of the ways that I did well in my undergrad. I know that it's going to be different in a master's, but just with these things of like self-discipline, time management, that I really fine-tuned whenever I was doing my undergrad, so I can help you and help me at the same time. My first tip is immersion. I think it's just like really unavoidable to go to class. I just made it a cardinal rule in final year. I don't know about you, but I used to get a feeling whenever I'd go home from a really good tutorial and be like, that was so interesting, and I'd want to go home and like talk to all my friends about it. I really felt like a genuine sense of like inspiration from having a really good class discussion. I also think it's down to speaking with tutors. If you have any questions, like don't be afraid to ask. Like chances are somebody else is thinking the same thing. It's really good for forming like a support network whenever it comes to assignment time, and whenever you're like speaking about it with a few different people, that really improves the overall quality of your knowledge of something. You'll bring out things in other people that you might not have thought of before, and that's another critical voice that will improve the quality of your essay. Another way that I did this was looking up like author talks on YouTube, and just like having them on in the background if I was doing like another task. Like if I was tidying my room, I'd try and maybe find like a podcast with the author that I was reading at that time, like incorporating it into your daily routine in a more casual way so it doesn't feel as stressful. And then whenever you go to class to talk about something, you will have all this like outside backing. If you study literature as well, you probably enjoy it, so I think doing these extra things isn't really such a burden because it can be quite enjoyable. I just think it makes the words come so much easier whenever you sit down to write something, whenever you have heard it a few times before and had time to think about it and form your own opinions, which is ultimately what makes your work original and to the highest standard. I don't know about anybody else, but I would almost know what books I was going to write about on like week 2 or 3. Have like 2 or 3 texts that you're really interested in, and that you could see yourself writing an essay about, and then just learning enough about the others to get by in a class and choose it as supporting material for something. I think you have a personal interest in a few that makes you naturally focus on them a little bit more. Just having that genuine interest like really bring something else to the table, and I think it's something that really helped me. Your teachers want to help you and they want to give you the best tools for you to write the best essays so that they can read interesting essays and not just read like clone copies of the same things over and over again. So yeah, immersion. I really just urge you to expose yourself to those conversations and be a part of them as much as you can, and I promise it'll help your degree and it'll help your overall quality of life. So my second piece of advice is don't overcomplicate your essay topics. This also applies to your dissertation. I think picking your topic from within your confidence zone is quite important if you want to make sure that you get the best result that you're capable of. I think sometimes with literature it's easy to pick something that's like really like shiny and interesting to you in the abstract, but whenever you go to talk about it you don't have that much authority. Striking the balance and finding something that's original, that has enough criticism for you to bounce off without being like a carbon copy of all of the discourse that surrounds the topic already. I think that's where you will get the best result. I think choosing your topic is so important. Choosing the text for your essay is really important as well, because if you pick something that you're really not familiar with, you have to waste more time getting familiar with it whenever you could be spending that time formulating really coherent and intelligent opinions around it. I do think that time is like your most precious resource when you're at university, and you would spend it like you do with money. So I think for example, for my dissertation I worked on a few books that I was really familiar with, that I loved when I was a teenager. Or for example, I wrote about Neil Gaiman's Coraline, but I also wrote about A Series of Unfortunate Events. So by picking those books that are quite well known, but picking a question that was really specific, I was able to create a question that gave me a lot of scope to go into new territory, but ultimately have that like anchoring criticism to come back to. And I think that's really where my mark was brought up. So yeah, it's just like finding your boundary and then pushing it a little bit but just not too much. I think that's like the most important thing whenever you're trying to find your topic, and that will help you. So my third one is time management. So at university I was like notoriously bad with time management. I always have insomnia. I'm not a morning person. I struggle with like getting to class on time and trying to juggle the different assignments and things like that. But I figured out a way to fix it in final year. So I think the importance of prioritizing where your energy goes in final year is really important. I know university is like, for a lot of people, a way of getting into the adult world. It's the first time where you're going to have this much control of your life, and I think it's easy to go ham on like trying to make yourself have the best, most productive routine. I think there's so much pressure from things like university vlogs and like whenever I was at university, all this like girl boss, like university morning routines, like 6 a.m. library routine kind of videos were coming out, and it just like really affected me, because I used to think like I'm never going to be able to have this kind of routine, which means I'm never going to have this kind of grades. So I was like a really impressionable student, and I wanted to also get my grades to a really high standard, but I also wanted to go to the gym. Really in this culture of like toxic productivity that I think is being broken down a lot because of the pandemic. I think there's a lot of pressure at university to be in the library from 9 to 5 all the time, and for some people that really works, but personally for me it just didn't work. I did all my plans and my reading in the library, but whenever it came to writing my essays, I waited until I was in an environment where I could really concentrate, especially in something that like literature that's a little bit creative, and I figured out a working style that worked really well for me. I was a real night owl at university. I also used to work late evenings at work too. It just wasn't possible for me to also be able to like wake up at 6 a.m. and go to the library. I think I realised that if I worked like slightly later into the evening, I would really hit like my peak concentration time. I would have like all distractions eliminated, and I really got the best work out of that time. But I do think it's better to figure out like your own working style and not listen to all of the people around you and all of the voices that you hear online telling you to have this really specific routine. So we all have different sleep schedules. Sometimes you're wasting energy trying to change that routine that you could be putting into reading a really good critical source for your essay. But I was trying to balance all of these different like goals, and it just wasn't sustainable, so I just like narrowed it down to the one goal, made studying my priority over everything else, and that included my part-time job. I would turn down shifts if they were like begging me to come in. I was like, no, I have work to do, which is something that I was really bad at doing in first and second year. The allure of money whenever you are offered other shifts was always more appealing to me than getting good grades in first and second year, but in final year I just really put my foot down and was like, no, sorry, like this is a part-time job to support me while I study. I think a lot of workplaces don't really take that into consideration whenever you are a student, so it's important to set those boundaries for yourself. That can also go with your friends. Like if you have a deadline and your friends are pressuring you to go out, like put your foot down, say no, like you're allowed to. You don't have to go to every single night out. You can go to the nights out whenever they might have a deadline. Like there will always be other opportunities to party. I took the pressure off myself to try and eat like perfectly as well. I used to always try and be like, I need to have my meal prep done on a Sunday, and I need to have this and this to eat this week or whatever. I was also trying really hard at the time to become vegetarian, which is something I've done since leaving uni, but I think taking that pressure off myself to give a lot of effort and time to that whenever I was studying was also a really big burden off. I'm also conscious of like, I don't want you to like make your whole life about studying, but for me it really did help to just take away those extra stressors and things that I was putting myself under pressure to do, and doing things that I actually enjoyed that actually helped me relax. And I do think in that case having that time management is also really important, and doing it in your own way, at your own pace. Another piece of advice I had is use the library in a way that works for you. I don't know what the library situation is at the minute because of COVID, so I can't give advice on that, but this also applies to like online sources as well. I used to try and have 10 sources per essay, so 10 things outside of my main text that I was referencing. It could be another book or a play or poem or an essay written by somebody or a piece of criticism, just something else. It could be a video, a news article. 10, I used to make myself a goal, 10 extra things per 3,000 word essay. Just imagine like you're cooking and your references are like the spices and the herbs that make it more flavourful and make it original and memorable. I had like a big master document, and whenever I would be reading a book from a class, I would highlight things and add it into the document, like onto my laptop, and whenever I would come back to my essays I would have this big bank of resources from all this work that I'd already done that I was able to pull out quotes from and like pull out some of my own thoughts that I had forgotten that I had, and I stuck to that, and I do think that that helped me. Spend longer on your plan than writing. I think this is like so important. Have a really cohesive plan. I think it will help you write 10 times the quality of your essays. I know some people just sit down and write, and they write first class essays, and I'm so confused about how they do that. That's what I would have done whenever I was writing my essays that were getting lower results. I would just kind of like wing it, because I always thought that's the way that I work best, which is like isn't true. I think I did still wing it whenever I was going to write initially, but I had a framework that always kept me coming back to the question. I also think it's less daunting to go into the library to write a plan rather than to write an essay. But I think being able to write an essay freely, but within a framework, will really give you that scope for having your own like originality, but also having like a main body for them to critique structurally as well. It's easier to rewrite and edit after whenever things aren't so all over the place, and you can have a look back at your plan and be like, actually I was going to say that, but I think it makes more sense to say this, and like going with your gut, but always having that original skeleton to refer to whenever you're fleshing things out. Another thing that I did throughout my time at university was learning to work to self-imposed deadlines. This also came from doing some freelance journalism stuff as well. I think that is such a valuable life skill that a lot of people don't have, and I think it comes from being in an environment where you're at school all the time and you always have like specific deadlines. I think we learn to put more emphasis and value on deadlines set from outside sources. So I think it's like teaching yourself that your own deadlines are just as important, treating yourself like a child who you're trying to train to do this thing that you want them to do. This might be controversial, but I think a week is all you need to spend on an essay that's about 3,000 words for undergrad. I would recommend spending 2 days reading, 2 days on your plan, 2 days writing your first draft, and a day editing and proofreading and referencing. I really do think that's all you need. I know for me my brain works best whenever I am writing in that state where I'm in the environment, like in the headspace, to not get distracted and to write things really coherently. And having that concentrated period of time, like a week, was really helpful for me. I would give myself like a few days on either side to relax after and not think about anything and clear my mind before starting the next thing. Because a teacher might set you a deadline of like the 30th of April, but maybe you have something to do on like the 26th, so you want to get it done by the 25th. Those deadlines are there for you to kind of like set your own deadlines within it, especially whenever sometimes they give you like 3 essays due on the same day. It's really important for you to like make a plan, even if it's just a vague window of time for you to do a specific thing. I think that will really help you like focus. Another thing I've said is making sure all your formatting and everything is really good, like your proofreading, getting somebody else to read it and have read their eye over it and see if you could write something more clearly. Get Grammarly is another thing that I recommend to literally everybody. If you don't have Grammarly and you're an English student, then oh my god, what are you doing? Like, get Grammarly, seriously, it's free. But if you were writing a book, you wouldn't like publish a first draft and then send it out into the world. Like, you would spend a lot of time having a look at it. I also think referencing is the biggest waste of time. I know it's like necessary for like intellectual property and stuff, but I just think, what is the point? It's so time consuming and boring. These are things that helped me, but I think ultimately like it's really good to sit down with a pen and paper, or sit down with like somebody who's maybe in your class or like you're friends with, and be like, what is going on, like to make some sort of action plan or like promise to yourself to like try your best. And that doesn't have to be with the goal of getting a first. I think I watched a video by Ali Abdal recently, and he was saying about like input goals rather than output goals. I think that has really changed my recent approach to things, and I wish somebody had told me that whenever I was at university. Set yourself a goal of like getting through all your reading this week, or reading a certain amount of extra things around something. In a lot of cases, universities are not very good at going to the individual and helping them learn things. It's really up to you to figure out the way that you work. The good thing about degrees like literature is that there's so much room for personalisation. You can explore things that you're interested in. Chances are you'll be marked by a tutor who has their own idea of what's interesting. So I think it's really good to balance that of like academic integrity along with your own originality. I think like ultimately you can't fully control if you get a first or not. I think you could only get yourself to the point where you can be in the situation where luck is on your side, or that your work reaches a marker who really appreciates your ideas. It's always having that backup of like a really solid body of criticism and a really solid body of original ideas. If I was getting a few firsts from these tips, I would think that it was just luck that got me there, but I do think because I had such a consistent increase in my grades that it shows that I was doing something right. And I think the thing that I was doing right was just like managing my time to suit me best personally, and that required a lot of knowledge of how I didn't work well, things that didn't help me personally. Putting myself in those uncomfortable situations where I had to go to a class if I hadn't read the text fully really did benefit me in the long run. It saved me a lot of heartbreak in the end. I think if I had finished my degree and I had always thought that I could have done better, it would haunt me for like the rest of my life. So I wanted to at least know that whatever result I got, I had like done the best that I could, and I think I was able to be in that position where luck was on my side a little bit. It's such a subjective area and such a subjective degree that it's really hard to like make a set formula. Like it's not maths. You can't get 100% because you got all of the questions right. I know that's not how maths degrees work either, by the way. Put in the work, and your ideas are your own, and they're intelligent and well put, and nobody can take that away from you. So yeah, I hope that helps someone. If you are in the middle of assignments in the minute, I'm so sorry. It's such a stressful time to be studying. Maybe this will help a little bit. Maybe it's too late. I'm not sure when the actual deadlines are. If you do have to cram, you can write a really good essay in a week, don't worry. But if you have more time, don't do that to yourself. Like, enjoy your life. I think ultimately like a 2-1 is all you need in life. Like, get a 2-1 and you're golden. But if you do want to get that first just for your own peace of mind, then this is how I personally did it. It takes a lot of like self-reflection and like painful self-growth in ways that will help you in other areas of your life too, like not just your degree. So it is really worth like putting in the time and the effort to learn your working style, and making a plan that best suits you and that like really optimizes your time and the resources that you have. So thank you for watching if you did. Hopefully it was helpful to someone. I'll be back with more book content soon. I'm getting more into a habit of doing like this whole filming thing, so if anyone has any advice for how this would change for doing a master's, please let me know, because I have no idea what a master's is going to be like. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.